and we need to give opportunity for the other participants to join us, so they can witness this special conversation.
Thank you so much for having us. It's a real pleasure.
It's our
pleasure to be part of it.
It's our pleasure. Has it
we can. I absolutely understand the difficulties and the uncertainty of the circumstances, right? So
yeah, of this kind of format. Yeah, this pandemic context has been in so many ways challenging, also in our professional and academic life. So
absolutely.
We try to find solutions, but they also come with many challenges, and
I think you found one.
We still do like old-fashioned skin contact, right?
Hugs, yeah, we Portuguese do.
I think everyone does it.
Yeah, I think so. I was speaking for myself. I think we can get started if you're okay with that. I think
let's go.
Everyone's joining us, so we can start. And I can start by, of course, presenting you, welcoming first everyone to this special conversation with Musa Paradisiaca, an artistic project by Eduardo Guerra and Miguel Ferrão that started in 2010. I have their permission to read their own presentation in their website, musaparadisiaca.net. That's right, where you can find some more about their work. So they present themselves like this. It is known, Musa Paradisiaca is known to produce objects and actions for exhibitions and events. To do this, it gathers others, be they collective or individual. By doing so, it shows things turning into other things, turning into other things, turning into other things. They have had important exhibitions in Portugal and also abroad. Only to point out the latest, they had the Eye of the Beholder this year, 2020, in Fundação Carmona Costa here in Lisbon. They have exhibited also in MAT, Museum of Art, Architecture and Technology here in Lisbon, also 2018, for example, and in the Whitechapel Gallery in London, or in Berlin, Haus der Kulturen der Welt. Just to give a brief presentation, and because I think that this other that you use so many times in your presentation is absolutely crucial, not only to your artistic process, works, the way you think about them, but also to this conversation. This specific conversation has as a starting point your film Hunting Scene from 2013, shot in São Tomé. This film that you have in the internet and that we are going to see here a little further features Caustrino Alcântara, a São Tomean linguist and cultural specialist, reading a fragment of a prayer of a dying nobleman, Valdevinus, fatally wounded by a high court prince, Carloto. This prayer is part of the script of Chiloli, a theatrical tradition of the island of São Tomé. This prayer is also part of the Mantua's Marquise in the Emperor Charles Magno tragedy. And this play by the 16th century author, playwright Baltasar Dias, also contains this prayer and is also a literary and dramatic reelaboration of other poetic and literary accounts of this episode of the Carolingian cycle. This film, this hunting scene, was the point of departure, is of this conversation, and was of a previous conversation that we had to prepare today's. And so I think it would be important, first of all, and to those who did not have the opportunity of engaging in this previous conversation with us, and before we see the film, to ask you in the first place, how did you come to know Chiloli? And this cannot be answered without the other part of the question, that is, how did you get to know Caustrina Alcântara, and how this project was born?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the introduction and for the pleasure of your words presenting us. These two questions are the first things that should come first. In fact, we came to São Tomé and Príncipe, a former colony of Portugal and an independent country since 1975. We came to São Tomé and Príncipe for the first time in 2010, 2011, and we were somehow enriched by the opportunity to work and collaborate with some of the actors presenting this traditional play nowadays still in São Tomé. And we were fortunate to be with one of the most, I would say, important groups presenting it, Formiguinha da Boa Morte, which is a group formed in 1955, and that, as usually with other groups presenting this traditional play in São Tomé, has a connection between its members. Sometimes they are part of the same family, other times they are just gathering from the same community. But the important thing that we heard about before going there for the first time and read about, the important thing was that this play would be only performed by men, and the most important feature of each of these actors would be not the specific quality of their representational performance, but would be their qualities as members of a community. So a noble in a play, in this play, Chiloli, has to be also a kind of noble in the real life. And this connection between theater and life was right in the core of our interest on it. But in fact, what led us to travel the space between here and there, and between there and here, was the important notice that we had about the actualization of this performance in the days of today. So it is something that is alive. It is something that is connected with somehow a past from some centuries ago, with an uncertainty on its origin, with a lack of information about how and when it came to the territory in itself. But it is something that is known by heart, by a community, and it is something that is performed by heart by everyone. So an actor and a spectator, a participant, an audience is at the same level of the understanding of this specific tradition. So this really struck us. And of course, we could find it, and we can find it everywhere. It's not a specific deal to find really alive performative actions or traditions coming from different times in the really present in the present. We can find it everywhere, but here we had the opportunity to work with one of the groups. So that was one of the reasons why we came to São Tomé for the first time, that we had the opportunity to meet these people. Eduardo, would you like to?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you. We're trying to be as objective as we can about this presentation, because there are several aspects of this work that still strike us and that still question us in so many ways. So we also hope to leave some room for you to be acquainted with it, and also challenge us also with questions and the problems it arises. So we got to know Formiguinha da Boa Morte, which sweetly translates to good death end, the good death end, which is a really dear name in the community. And of course, Chiloli is like one of the first folkloric, really exciting features of São Tomé, for sure. There are also others, such as Danço Congo, such as Bulawe, other traditions. But this one was, of course, interesting per se, but also it began to be more interesting after we got to know Caustrino Alcântara. So after seeing at least two presentations, and after being aware and overcoming this first discomfort you have with the relationship with São Tomé, because historically it has a really abrupt independence. It was one of the last. Portugal was one of the last countries actually dealing with decolonization. So you can feel a specific relationship towards Portuguese culture, and vice versa. So there was this trend in the past to over-exoticize this place. And we, of course, as everyone who thinks a bit nowadays, we wanted to get rid of this feeling of exoticism or of strangeness, of this feeling of difference, which is quite different in our way of looking of the idea of other or othernesses. So Caustrino Alcântara was basically our mentor in that process, in a way, because he's both a scholar, but he doesn't hold an academic degree. He's a specialist, but still is quite syncretic. He works politically with the communities, but he also lives quite outside of the community. So actually it was a friendship that developed in a really intense way and strange, in a strange way, till the point that we had to do something with it. So we were in São Tomé interested in Chiloli and this oral tradition and theatrical tradition, but we were there also doing other works. So we were part of a larger project working with an ethnobotanist from Coimbra, Maria do Céu Madureira. We worked with communities. We made some short films for television with animation, stop motion animation with children and local therapists. So we were pretty much into what is like the root of of a kind of mysticism, which is, if it's not really well understood, it could just look as you're overwhelmed with the sense of the exotic. And Castrino literally just he showed us around in the most profound way we could find. So this is how we got to have a real grasp of what it means to work with based on Chiloli, but underneath it, we're also working with and through Castrino Alcântara.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. I think the question was also a way to get to this. I mean, my rather simplest introduction to the web and to the diachronical and also synchronic process of diverse literary, poetic accounts of this episode of the Carolingian cycle was to get to the focus of this conversation, that is not so much this way, but mostly its presence in São Tomé, its appropriation by the São Toméans, and mostly by, I think, Castrino Alcântara, that was, as you said, a personal guide, and was through his voice that you got to know Chiloli, and that you got, it was a particular voice about the creation of this collective memory and the appropriation of this account, and that exists for centuries. So how was this film born from this particular dialogue you had with him?
Well, it is known, of course, between the three of us, that most of what happened within the day, the film was shot in one day. You have to understand it. All the things that occurred in that day are a bit of a secret, because they were not only a surprise for us, but also a surprise for the ones that followed within that day. We spent some real conversation time with Castrino in São Tomé back then, with a lot of meetings, not only to see Chiloli, but also to understand the references from where it could have been somehow born. Of course, Castrino had specific literary and written references, some of them pretty old, so some of them already disappeared, I guess, because they were stored in really strange and specific ways. But Castrino had an idea of what Chiloli, or this tradition, this Carolingian tradition, was before the 20th century and after the middle of the 20th century. And of course, he is somehow back then introducing us to the misunderstanding that really exists between what was brought and what was created within the islands in terms of literary or narrative, with a base on medieval literary tradition. So, of course, he was able to introduce us into a process of understanding the misunderstanding as a way to create Chiloli. So there is no specific origin that should be decided on the tradition. The tradition in itself, as Castrino said to us, is a manifestation of a transformation. So this transformation is precisely the core of what we would come to create together during that day when we meet to film. The film is based on this specific scene, the prologue of Chiloli, or the prologue of the narrative that came to create Chiloli. We never know who comes first, the egg or the chicken. But in this case, the prologue is the hunting scene. And the hunting scene is very much described in several written or literary references. And it is about this idea of having a nobleman that is somehow caught in the middle of a murder. So someone is murdered in a forest. And there are differences among the several references of this literary tradition and the narrative that is the base of it. Some of them describe pretty well this walk through the forest. Some of them don't. But the specific reference that was used by Caustrino was a reference that had a lot of details about the connection between three characters. Two characters are two nobles, I mean, the Marquis, of course, and Valdevinhos, the one that will be murdered. And another character is kind of a phantom character that is pretty much very, very well described by Caustrino in the text that we have provided to the internet. This third phantom character is a horn. And there is a connection between the three characters that is based on what is heard and what cannot be said. And the first move to introduce us to the mood of the film when we were shooting its parts, before, of course, organizing it in what would be later a film. The first introduction of it is the connection between these three characters and the walk within a forest that we didn't know, accompanied by several people that we didn't know also. And with Caustrino as kind of the king of the action. Because he said to us, when we first saw the two representations of Chile that Eduardo just mentioned, he said to us that this prologue was about to be somehow dismantled from the tradition in his present representation. Somehow he said that it was forbidden among some of the tragedies, some of these groups, they're called tragedies, to represent this specific prologue. Because there was a very strange and powerful connection between the dead and the living people. Because there was an actor somehow performing someone being in the state of being about to die. And that would be dangerous for the actor in itself. This can be a misunderstanding, and it is, of course, a misunderstanding because we can't prove if this is the present situation of the tradition. But the version of Caustrino was this, and we followed his version, and that's how the film started.
Was born. So I think this was the ideal moment for us to see hunting scene, I think, after this this introduction.
Great.
Alicia, we don't have sound. I don't think. Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Sorry, can I suggest something?
Yes, please.
So we're streaming it through your internet, and then it has to come through Zoom. I suggest that each one of us goes to the page and does a live streaming directly on the Vimeo account, so it has better quality, and we can all just start now and give 10 minutes for this.
Yes, but I don't have. You need to go to your Vimeo account. I don't have the.
Can we share it, Miguel? Do we have our credentials here? Maybe we put it on chat.
For that.
Because the image is flickering and the sound is delayed. So I think it makes no sense to see the
If you
film.
don't mind doing this, because it's your Vimeo account, so I can.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Let me just fix it one
You
second.
don't mind.
Can I just share the link for the film maybe?
In the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And you'll be provided with a password.
Yes, just a moment.
And then later on, if you want to see it, you could also go to the intranet.
Second. I was not expecting this invitation, so I'm doing my best.
I thought it would be possible to play it.
Yeah, we are sorry because.
I think Zoom is overloaded with work.
And it compensates the streaming needed for all of us. So
yeah.
I've just shared in the chat the link, and I think you need I think you don't need a password with this. This is a private link, so I think you can use it.
Can you please try to open it and play it on?
So we can see it individually, but not together.
And I will be ready.
Thank you.
Okay, so everyone just if you want, you can just see it. It has about
Alicia's
7 minutes 50. I just think it's best for each one sees on their own computer. So just goes to the link and plays it on his own computer.
Okay.
So I'm not supposed to share my screen?
No, we won't see through your screen. Each one would see through their own, which would guarantee better quality.
Perfect.
Okay.
7 minutes to watch it. Okay.
Are we all here?
And we're back.
Yeah? Okay. Thank you, guys. I wanted to say that we have, of course, Professor Nicholas Jones with us in this conversation. When you feel free to jump in whenever you feel fit, whenever you want to. I think the introduction was really crucial to prepare the film, the contact with your work, and we could see and hear all the characters that you have presented us, and we could, I think, not only hear but feel the strength of. But the curious thing, and of course that we are talking about your film, your artistic process, creation, your reflection about it, together with Caustrino, is that Caustrino is not an active. I mean, he's not an actor. That yeah. So Chiloli is part of the Saint Tomean collective memory, but and social and cultural heritage already, of course, and it's of common understanding, I think, in the island, has a family tradition, of course, I think. Am I right?
Yes, you are totally right. He's not an actor. He's part of the neighborhood where this group, this specific group, Formiguinha da Boa Morte, lives. So he's part of the community, but he's not an actor. He has never been one. And the film is also shot in one of his somehow private lands, I would say. So it's also it is coming back to the specific story of his family. So the film is right in the middle of two families, a family that is the community and a family that is the family of his own. And also, of course, we cannot and we could not, even the two of us, understand it we understood it only 1 year or two after. The changes that Caustrino does to the text, the original text, even the text that is coming from the tradition that he knew too well, are immense. So the prayer that he is somehow performing, Valdovinos prayer, is not the original prayer, word by word. There are slight changes.
Yeah, by original. Sorry to interrupt you. By original, please. You mean the script of Chiloli, the way it is said in the representation of
exactly the script Chiloli. That is nowadays presented by the actors, and also the script that was written or fixed by Fernando Reis, an author of one of the main references on this particular tradition, a Portuguese writer. So Caustrino is somehow changing within the performance of this scene the specific tradition from where it is coming from. So it is a curse and a courage at the same time, that we could only understand later.
I would just add a final. Of course, there's a lot to say, and it would be nice to reply to answers, because as we've shared, the film still poses us questions today. But there's a really simple and for us still striking way that makes us still want to, present this film and see it as something active, although it was made in 2013, which is, I hope this doesn't come out as a provocation, but it is, and it is also for us. And it deals with the way one is, in a way, there's a somewhat sense of damnation in heritage, which is that you're obliged or you're you're imprisoned into a certain cultural background, but at the same time, the film shows this really impure or this really simple struggle with trying to avoid with the notion of origin or the notion of starting point or the notion of where the narrative began, where it started, where it stops. In the end, it's still a prayer of Olympias, which is, you know, one of the ultimate appeals one can make when when struggling in his own life. And one of the exciting things about the film, at least for me, and I think I speak for Miguel also, is this can be understood in several contexts. And the fact that Caustrino is not acting in what we, you know, understand in our in our European culture as acting is for us quite liberating, which is acting is part of daily life. It's not something that is outside of life, as we've managed to pull throughout the years. It doesn't have to be done in a theater hall. It can be done on the street. You can either watch a fragment of a story or 6 hours of the narrative. People join in, and this notion of theater, it's still embodied in what we try to do nowadays, which is maybe next to some of I don't want to come out with a lot of references, but this notion of acting as an essential part of daily life. So this notion of pretending, of making believe, not being so far off of being. I don't know if this makes sense, but this is something I think we can add up to the discussion that some of the discussions this seminar has been brought up.
Yeah, I think we should open the debate, because I think you're giving some important clues to and your work really makes us wonder, and I think there will be a lot of questions. I would like to, in order to open the debate, to give also something you said in our previous conversations, and I think it is also central. That is about this being Caustrino's own view of its importance and relevance as a social, cultural, mythic mirroring of his understanding of life in the islands and how it shapes people's consciousnesses. I think this has to do what you were saying about the daily life. Yes, Miguel.
No, I was just agreeing. Absolutely. I think this is his own view, but it is not only the view of a man, it's the view coming from an ontology created from the connection between a group of people in a specific circumstance, in a specific situation. So it's much more about the creation of an ontology that was not there before, and that may only exist after we leave, after we left the place. So this is I think the situation that I was somehow calling before a curse or a courage moment, something that we don't really understand.
In giving voice to a community. I think we can open the debate.
Please do.
Whoever wants to jump in and are there questions, doubts, perplexities?
I mean, if I jump in, no, again, just great work, and really, just really rich and provocative, what the film portrays. And again, for me, again, speaking specifically, as a Black person, it's nice to see finally for once where, and I'll get to this in, my talk, but where Blackness is centered. And it's so, nice. And again, finally for once, again, representations and treatments of Blackness, however that's conceived, defined, understood, or in this specific case in Príncipe Sao Tome, how again that spiritual life performance embodiments again are centered and allowed to exist on their own without any forms of filtering or judgments, which for me again has been so, for me honestly, quite frankly, frustrating, and is really for again the impetus for the arguments and the positions that I make in my book Staging Habla de Negros, which I think, even though I'm focusing on early modern Spain, there's a lot of overlap and fluidity with Portugal as well, what's happening during this, in the same time period, whether it's Chiado, Vicente, whomever, so on and so forth. There's so many really rich examples. And it's just funny because I was just thinking when I was watching the film, it just made me think of, and I can't remember the playwright. I'll have to look in my notes and find his name, but essentially it's a play where there's African herbalist and this Black man who's an herbalist and he's working with herbs, so on and so forth. I can't remember the name of the playwright, but just watching your film makes me think of that, this hunting scene, and again forms of sub-Saharan African knowledge and knowledge production, and again the challenges, again in doing this, the work that we're all doing. It really requires us to be vulnerable and uncomfortable intellectually and scholarly and artistically, creatively, aesthetically, with respect to, especially in the context of, in the sub-Saharan African context, again, working in these non-linear frames, because a lot of times the way in which the universe is understood and conceived a lot of times is not understood in these Enlightenment notions of, this logic, certain types of logics and forms of Cartesian thought that are very, that fit easily and neatly in a box. But yeah, really fascinating and great work. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, that's something we've, of course, we had in mind before we've traveled, and there's this. I would try and go a bit further with that, which is, I think, generally speaking, like society is evolving into this. It has seen many configurations of what could be called a melting pot, using the Brazilian terms. But I think that the sense of discomfort you're talking about should be, and it is, at the core of what we try to do as artists, with this absolute sense of otherness, which doesn't mean different or similar. It means other. And as soon as this is acknowledged, it can be through the academia or through the art world or whatever. As soon as this is acknowledged, one can actually grasp much more and study and observe in a much less narrowed speck of reality.
I would just like to add at least one concept that I think that is also related with what you just said, Nick, and it is amazing to have your view on it, of course. There is the sense of property, and I think that the sense of property here for the film and for us afterwards, and even nowadays when we see it, and this was the first film we've done within Musa Paradisiaca, so it's also the starting point of something new. and the sense of property is here very much in question. So the property for knowledge, of course, the property for or the property related with the sensation of heritage, but also the property of bodies, the property of your own body. And I think that within the film, we are always struggling with the idea of where things are coming from, and also where are they in that precise moment. Because I was just mentioning a few minutes ago about a place where this was shot, but of course the place where this was shot is not the place of the film in itself. The place of the film is a place without an understanding of what should be, where bodies should be, relating. And I think that we were somehow addressing to it when we were doing it, but I think that most of all, and the core of everything when we talk about this is the necessity of Caustrino to create a space where there was no property. So no one knew where we were. No one knew what we were talking about. And this place of uncertainty, I think that was the most productive offer that somehow he left to us and to the film itself.
Thank you, Nick. I don't know if you want to ask another question or add something to this debate, or anyone else in the audience. Let's call it the audience. No? I would like to ask Miguel and Eduardo, because I know that there has been some representations here in Lisbon of Chilali. Formiguinha da Boa Morte has come here, for example. And I know you know people who are working in this dissemination, this presentation of Chilali around outside São Tomé. What would be your future projects, things you would like to develop?
Mm-hmm. Regarding hunting scene specifically in São Tomé, or regarding other aspects of our work?
What you would like to add, yeah, Chilali or?
Okay. So first of all, I think everyone should see Formiguinha da Boa Morte, if you can. Actually, there's a really good documentary of the play itself by, help me out, Miguel.
Inês Gonçalves.
Inês Gonçalves. I think if you search online, you can have at least a preview of a documentary on one of these tragedies of this group plays. And she's a Portuguese director, and she has done a completely different work than ours, but it would be really interesting to put Chilali in context, because it gives more images to the historical context that we've shared here. But for us, still, we're more and more interested in this, as we were replying to Nick, in this idea that art can create this extreme sense of otherness, which can happen in so many places, not only in museums, that eventually it kind of puts people in the position of, not only questioning specific beliefs, but actually messing up with the whole of their beliefs, trying to, it's not to create a perturbancy or to dismantle belief, but it's to make evidence that we do play roles, and we do assume and change rules in our daily life. So one of the main aspects that our work tries to convey is this idea of intimate otherness. I think if you see some of our exhibitions, or if you see some of the things we do, this is much more explicit. But this is something that comes out of what we've learned with Caustrino. And then specifically about Caustrino, we have been, it's not something that we've done in 2013. We exchange mail, we are in contact, so we are aware of what he's doing, he's aware of what we're doing. We're now doing the second edition reprint of our first publication where his essay is printed out again. And it also gives, it's on the intranet, it also gives a really good insight on what the Santominian culture, how he thinks the Santominian culture perceives Chiloli. And this is really interesting. He also talks a little bit about hunting scene. He talks about this notion of heritage as a sense of, damnations as something that can be, that shouldn't search for an origin. Actually, there's a really interesting saying of his in a seminar about Creole, about the establishing of a Creole dictionary, which is when someone question some grammatical issue or syntactical issue, he said, "No, you're wrong," and his interlocutor was asking why, and he said, "Because your information is coming from the realm of the living, and mine is coming mine is coming from the, what's the word in English? How do we translate?
Cosmos.
The cosmos. And he also does this as a provocation, of course, because he knows like this is a political decision, like origin should not be seen as a legitimation of transformation. Will should, and the way he puts it is really, it really teaches a lot.
If I may, let me just add one small historical detail, because Anna was asking about it, and I think that it is fair to give it. I think that the first representation of Chiloli outside of São Tomé and Príncipe was happening in Lisbon at Gulbenkian. It was in 73, and this was also the mark of a change in the representation of Chiloli in itself. So because of this travel, the groups performing it, in this case, Formiguinha de Boa Morte, the most international group performing it out of São Tomé and Príncipe, because of this travel, the play changed in terms of duration. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, this is a play that usually has a duration of 6 hours. Starts during the day and ends during the night, so or the evening. But if you think about it, if you transform something that has 6 hours of duration into something that has the option of 19, 60, or 10 minutes, you can think about the changes that have to be made to whatever is in the core of the heritage. So it has to be elastic. It has to be somehow erotic. It has to be somehow free. So the idea of taking Chiloli out of São Tomé and Príncipe and understanding it as an heritage of something that is between an European context and an African context has to understand that the Santomian themselves believe in it as something that has to be and may be changed. So this is, I think, the core of what somehow Chiloli proposes to anyone,
and I think that
for the two of us specifically.
I think the last reply to Anna is we were invited, and this seminar is online, but we're our heads are also in Batalha. We also while visiting Batalha, I know that not everyone had that chance, but we also think that this, we thought about hunting scene also because of a visit there. And we also thought about an audiovisual installation for Batalha that could be an outcome also of this work we're doing together, because the unfinished chapels in a way represent this. They could be contextualized in this notion of not having a beginning or an end. The thing that the Romantics call the ruin could be seen nowadays as a beginning of. It could be a site for construction and not a site for contemplation.
Okay, a lot of future projects, future collaborations. We will have now our keynote speaker that's here with us, and I invite you all to come to the next session. I would like to thank you so much, Musa, Eduardo, and Miguel, for this interesting conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicholas, also. Thank you all for coming, and see you in the next session. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Eduardo.